Well, good morning. It is great to be here this morning. And this is a classic. I learned this distinction from my coach, Steve Chandler, and it has served me well, and it certainly has served the organizations that I've helped well and the people that I've coached, and I believe it will serve you well today. We're looking at agreement versus expectation. Now, on a shallow view of that, you might say those seem like they're a lot alike. But I'm going to propose to you, if we take a little deeper dive today, you're going to see that they're quite distinct and quite different. And it will really help you and help your communication and help your relationships and help your work situation and your personal situation if you learn the difference between the two. And so I'm excited about within this next 30 minutes, what you may walk away with may be a very huge transformation for you. Or it might just be a little help that makes things a little better. And for some of you, it may just be a reminder, because we've talked about this in our communication sessions before. But with that said, agreement versus expectation. Our rules of the game. I'm seeing who's online here today. You've all heard these many, many times, but with regard to this topic, this is another move of ownership. It's saying if the communication is not going well, or if it's not really being excellent with somebody, perhaps with a vendor, perhaps with an employee, perhaps with a spouse, perhaps with a friend, perhaps in a board meeting somewhere, then I'm going to own it. So I'm not going to blame the other person, or I'm not going to blame the other people involved, or I'm not going to make excuses. What I'm going to do is I'm going to address it using this distinction. Where do I have agreement? Where do I just have an expectation is the question. And, people get really hung up on that, and we'll talk more about that, well, I should be able to expect people to do their job, shouldn't I, Dave? I should expect people to show up on time. I should expect people to do what they've said they're going to do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't expect that or should expect that. I'm just saying it doesn't always get the job done and get the result. So that's why we're looking at this distinction. So own it. Let's say the people that you're communicating with, we can't do anything about them this morning unless they're online with you. But what you can do is something yourself about how you can be a better communicator, a better leader, a better coach, a better manager, a better spouse, a better dad, a better board member. All those situations where we're leading or we have influence, let's own that and be the change we want to see. Let's be the best we can be. The second thing here is participate 100%. For this morning, what that means is I'm going to just pay attention. I'm going to stay engaged. I'm not going to just have this third rule, this big I know. I'm going to set aside my assumptions and the things that I've always thought and believed, or the mindset that I've had in the past. And for this 30 minutes, I'm going to be open-minded and consider how this might help me. How this might help my results. This might help my relationships. This might help the outcomes that I'm looking for in my life and in my business and in my other organizations where I work. And let's have some fun. Now, that's going to be a little easier for me today, because if you've noticed, my background is a little different. It's because behind those curtains is the Atlantic Ocean. I'm on a vacation, but I sure don't mind taking 30 minutes to do this to stay on schedule. So here we go. Let's have some fun. And there are our two words: agreement, expectation. Just want you to let those soak in for a minute. I've made a statement here with our little keys there. This distinction is a key to creating joyful accountability. I bet you don't see those two words together very often. Joyful accountability. Most people think accountability as a downer, or at least it's rough, it's tough, it's mean, or it's burdensome, or it's work. You hear the low tone in my voice, and I say accountability can be joyful. But joyful accountability will come from agreeing, because there's a freedom in agreement. It won't typically come from expectation. And that's what I want you to see with this, that one of the number one issues, that's crazy, isn't it? The number one issue I hear in businesses and organizations, we have communication issues. That's a big word. I don't really always know what it means. And when I dig a little deeper, they're usually talking about a lack of accountability. That basically people are not doing what is expected. They have jobs, they have things lined out, they have expectations for their employees, for their managers, and people are not just following through and doing what they're supposed to do. And they're saying, I don't know what to do about it, Dave. We've threatened them, we've bribed them, we've offered perks, we've made them feel like they might lose their job, we've turned them over to HR, we've had process improvement plans, we've done it all. How can we get our people to be accountable? And I'm saying this could be a key to that. So put on your listening ears and let's go with this. Going to start by putting up these first two. Just as I read through these, I'm going to read through a little portion of one and then a little portion of the other, and you'll see the comparison of the two. So, expectation is one-sided. They have, let's just say you're working with another individual that you both need to get a task completed, you both need to do something together. You would be the leader or the boss or the supervisor, whatever term you want to use there, and you have an expectation of that person. That is inside of you. That starts within you. You have an expectation that perhaps has been communicated, but they have an expectation. They expect to be treated well. They expect to be paid if they're an employee. They expect certain work hours. They expect a certain environment. They even may expect you to be understanding when they're a little bit late or they don't get someplace on time or they even miss work. I don't know what their expectation is. You don't know what their expectation is until you listen. Agreement is two-sided. If you have a contract or an agreement with somebody, we could start with that kind of agreement. You're both signing it, and at least it's objective and it can be read by both people and looked at. It's not something inside, it's something outside. It's something objective, not subjective. This is a real key. We don't know other people's thoughts. We don't know other people's feelings, and they don't know ours, and they don't know our thoughts and our feelings. And feelings and thoughts can be problematic because expectations are not met, and it creates conflict. Expectations, going back to our definition, are rooted in assumption. I just expected them. Dave, when you say be at the meeting at 8 a.m., I just expect people to be there. I assume. Well, if you've noticed, different people who have worked in different places and been from different families, they have a different expectation about what it means to be on time. Some people say if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. That's an expectation. Some people say as long as I get there within the first 30 minutes or so, I'm basically on time. Again, assumption. this is a communication issue. Agreement on the time the meeting starts is created through an open dialogue. And you're saying, Dave, I shouldn't have to sit and have a Dr. Phil conversation over the time the meeting starts. I don't think it has to be a long-winded process. I think as long as it's clear and both parties co-create and own the outcome. What do I mean by co-create? Well, we're not going to change the time necessarily because somebody else can't get there, or we might, but whatever we end up with together, we're not going to micromanage it to get compliance. We're not going to chase people down and be their watchdog and micromanage and oversee them and treat them like a child. We're not running daycares. What we're going to do is we're going to have an open dialogue. We're going to respect the other person, and together with them, we're going to create the agreement. This is where both parties can clearly articulate who does what by when. And the what includes the tasks and the roles, and the when is the deadline. Who does what by when? And it's defined, and we have an agreement. I don't expect them to do these things. The expectation can go away because now we have an agreement. Accountability in the expectation realm feels superimposed by a parent. It's the boss, big boss, little employee feeling. Or in personal relationships, you're just a butt. I mean, you just take over and you're going to run the show, and everybody feels your ego. And through fear of this person, we try to please and do what they want and meet their expectations, because if we don't, they go off like a cannon. That's the expectation world in my view. The agreement world is where we're treating each other as professionals, or as we're respecting each other as human beings, that once things are clearly defined and it's a safe place to communicate, we can agree on those. And once we have an agreement, what drives the process is an internal integrity that says, I keep my agreements. My accountability is primarily to myself. Let's look at that next point a little bit more, because this is the goal, the accountability that leads to results. In agreement, the accountability is first to yourself. Well, Dave, I don't know if I have people on my team that keep their agreements. Well, that's another issue. If we have people that we cannot trust to do what they say, once they're clear on it and they've said they agree to it, that's another issue. That's an issue of integrity. But the personal integrity of people, I'm saying for most cases that I've seen, we've not led as a leader. I've not led as a leader and sat down and made sure that people are in agreement and they're agreeing to do what they need to do. Therefore, the commitment is to honor what they have clearly accepted. The external enforcement is minimized or even eliminated. We don't have to babysit and chase and follow up and send reminders and then go behind them and micromanage. If we have true, mature agreements that have been co-created, that sets us free from micromanagement. Now, there are people that are new on a job that you need to follow up and help them and make sure they're doing okay. I'm not talking about that kind of follow-up. I'm talking about the nagging feeling that, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? I expect them to do it. I hope they do it. That kind of stuff goes away if you really get proficient at creating agreements. The accountability is turned inward. It's saying, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and I'm clear on what that is, and I am clear also on the deadline. And if somehow the deadline changes, I'm going to get in touch with you immediately and renegotiate the agreement if needed. So let's talk about commitment. all the time I see people wanting commitment without that kind of accountability and clarity. And it just doesn't work very well. True commitment only emerges when both parties have jointly defined and agreed upon the responsibilities, the deliverables, and the schedule. Well, Dave, I gave him a job description. Let's be honest. When's the last time you read your job description? When's the last time anybody ever read their, I wonder how many people could even find their job description if you even have them. This is conversational. This is leadership. This is communication. This is sitting down with a person when they're not meeting expectations that you may have and saying, we're lacking an agreement here. The expectation is not getting the job done. I need to upgrade my expectation to an agreement where it's two-sided, and I'm sure that everybody knows who does what by when. I want to tell a story here in a minute that'll illustrate that really well with a company that I'm currently working with. But let's look here at the conclusion for all this. And I want to go back to my story. When agreements are clear, that's really important, and honored with integrity, that's inside out, expectations become unnecessary because the execution flows from shared ownership, not external pressure. I'm no longer bossing you around. I'm not even really the point of accountability, the first point of accountability. Sure, you're going to check in with me and let me know what's going on, but you are working to keep your own word. You're working with your own conscience in mind, with your own value and your core value of I'm going to do what I say. Do you have people in your organization that do what they say they're going to do? I hope so. And if they're not doing what they say, then perhaps it isn't clear. Perhaps they just try to do it to please the boss or to just check a box, but they've not truly agreed to what they're doing. And that is the job of the manager or the leader, to sit down and have a conversation and work to a clear two-sided agreement. You're saying, Dave, if we operated like this, we wouldn't have time to do anything else. I'm going to propose to you, if you operated like that, you'd have a lot more time to do a lot of things, because you wouldn't have to be chasing after people, making sure they're doing their job. It's just unreal, the people that really have high expectations for people and then are disappointed and then get angry and then get discouraged and then want to put them into HR and put them out of the organization, or they think, well, maybe they need to be replaced. I've got one guy that he tries to go through a whole team of people about every 3 to 4 months. Before I came along, that was pretty much the pattern, because everybody tried to meet his expectations and they just couldn't, because there was no clarity, there was no agreement in place. So this story I want to tell you, it's a manufacturing plant, and there are a couple of layers of management, and it was just hodgepodge about whether things would always get done or not, certainly whether they could get done on time. And I implemented through my coaching just a little system that was so simple. We gave everybody a little tiny notebook, pocket-sized notebook. And I said, whenever you sit down with somebody and you need them to help you, you need to both write down in your book the date and the time, the specific thing that's going to be accomplished, and the deadline, and then sign it. You sign your book, they sign their book, so you both have a clear explanation, a clear description of what's going to occur and when who does what by when. They put down their responsibilities, you put down your responsibilities. We both have that same thing in our book, and we say, if it goes in the book, It's going to happen because we're people that do what we say. And if I can't agree to get it done by that time, or I can't tell you that it absolutely will be completed in this way, then we need to continue the dialogue till we have agreement. Only agreements go in these little books. And everybody in middle management, there were about 12 people, all got that. And some of them kicked back a little bit, but they laughed and we made it fun. We said, let's just try it. Well, folks, within 2 weeks, things were getting done on time. And I said, the other thing is we need to have things in our book. Some people just say, well, I just won't write anything down. That doesn't work. But people try to get around things and then they kind of laugh and we had a good time. But they now love those books because they know when they take their book to somebody and the other person pulls out their book and write it down, that's saying, this is my word. This is what I say I will do. This is our agreement and this will absolutely happen. Now, are there exceptions to this? Are there times that it doesn't work? Of course, we live in a human world. We live in a real world. But I'll tell you what, the vast majority of times, people would keep their word absolutely as written. And one fellow came to me, he said, well, I have this kind of agreement with this guy over here. We work together a lot. Do we have to write everything down? Because we pretty much keep our agreements with each other. And I said, what do you think? Good coaching response. Well, I'm not sure. Well, how long does it take to write it down? Maybe 15 or 20 seconds. And what would be the consequence? He was just trying to find a way out of a little task. And I get it. But he kept it and he wrote it down and he said, yeah, we're trying to be consistent around here and all follow the same process. So that brings me to this conclusion. I hope this distinction has been very helpful for you this morning. And I want to offer a few things. I want to give you that slide so you can study it. And I'll just email that to you. And I also have, most of you on this call know, I have 300 articles, a bunch of YouTube links to other events like this. And you can sign up at our this is all on the website. You can sign up to get my weekly article. I wrote a very short one this week because I'm down here at the beach. But, that's just a little reminder, a little nudge every week to stay on track. And then third, if we haven't talked lately and you want to just have a session to talk about communication or anything else, just email me and I would be glad to catch up if we haven't talked for a while. And that is it. So with that, I give you the rest of your day. I give you this distinction. And I think if you will put it into practice and try it out and think about where you are communicating with somebody and it's not going so well, or you're not really getting the result you want, where do I have expectations? Where do I have an agreement? I think it'll help you out. So see you next month and hopefully get a time to chat with some of you in between. Bye-bye.